Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we discuss Paul George and the Indiana Pacers. Why are we talking about this? Well, Paul George is returning to Indiana this weekend for the All-Star game, and Paul George was kind of reflecting on his time in Indiana, and he had some kind of interesting quotes regarding whether or not that he would ever get his jersey retired in Indiana. So I'll go ahead and show you this quote here. This is from an article by Mark J. Spears in Anscape. Here's the quote. Honestly, you think about the guys, there's only four guys that's retired there, George said. But when you think about it again, the guys that are up there, Reggie, 18 years? I think for them, it's a longevity that stands out in that arena. I just didn't play there long enough. They look back at the years and years down the line, if they look back years and years down the line, just how special that group was while I was there. Hopefully Tyrese can get them there, but if they don't get to where we got in 15, 20 years, then they might look at that as a special time. Tyrese will do great things there, and hopefully they surround him with talent to get him where he needs to get to, and then it won't even be a thought to get my jersey up there. So that is the quote there from Paul George. I'll say this, compared to other players that have had like quotes about like their time in the league or their time with franchises, that's actually probably one of the more realistic quotes, and I don't think it was that humble and realistic, because most guys are like have the Carmelo thing where they have like kind of this animosity towards a team, or they're like, hey, like, I think even Carmelo is like, like trying to change the narrative of what actually happened, where he's dude, I didn't even want out of Denver, bro. And it's like, dude, go back to every single article that was written at that time. Go back to your quotes at the time. Like, you wanted out of there. You wanted out of there. Don't try and change the narrative. But um, Paul basically saying like, hey, I think I probably should be up there if you look at like the resume of what we did while I was here, my resume and my individual accolades in the short time that I was here. But I get it that like it won't happen. And to that, I agree with Paul George on that. Now, again, when we talk about jersey retirements, guys, there isn't some sort of benchmark that a player has to get to. It's not like, if we're being realistic. Now, you can have your own individual benchmark, and I know people, were probably going to comment and be like, well, you have to win a ring to get your, jersey retired in an arena. And it's like, it's not, that's not how it works. So we're being realistic in this conversation. There's different benchmarks for every single team. And a lot of times, so if you go back to college, we talked about this in the Carmelo Anthony video we did a month ago. If you go to like college, it depends on the college, if you're talking about basketball jersey retirement. So some places might be like, hey, you need to get an All-American and you need to get a degree from here. Other places like in North Carolina, it might be like, hey, you need to win a national championship here and you need a degree from here, and you need to have a National Player of the Year award. And there's different benchmarks for different college teams. When it comes to professional sports, it's kind of a little bit of a trickier ball game, where sometimes in sports history, sometimes owners have tried to basically kind of like save face and kind of get good publicity, so they retire someone's jersey either prematurely, or they kind of make up an excuse to retire somebody's jersey. I think that happened like 2 or 3 years ago with the Washington football team. I don't know if they were the football team or the Commanders at that point, where Sean Taylor died very early in his life as a football player, and was a very good player for Washington while he was there. And they kind of did a whole, I don't know if it was a jersey retirement, it was some sort of ceremony for him. And it kind of was meant to be more of a like, hey, forget all the bad things that we're doing as an organization, as people that are running the organization. Here's Sean Taylor. And that was kind of like scummy that they did that. But, you also have the Oklahoma franchise, the Oklahoma City franchise, that have Nate McMillan's jersey retired and Nick Collison's jersey retired, who Nate McMillan, I don't think ever played in Oklahoma City. He did coach Seattle, so that one's kind of weird, because it's like they have the Seattle people that are retired there, and then they also have the Oklahoma City person. But those guys, like, just played their entire careers there, and were basically fan favorites and role players, and obviously the franchise really like them. So part of it too is like, one, what are your accomplishments there? And honestly, more importantly than your accomplishments, it's kind of like, how does the franchise view you, and how do you view the franchise, and how did you treat the franchise? If you're a person that in the prime of your career asked out because you are wanting to go to a bigger market, someone like a Paul George or a Carmelo Anthony or an Anthony Davis in New Orleans, you're probably not going to be, as favorably viewed by the fan base and the organization. And that's kind of the Paul George story here. It's like, dude, you asked out. And it's like, I think it was in this story too that I read that Paul George was like, hey, I just wanted to win, bro. And I didn't think we had the right tools for us to win. Dude, they traded you and then they went up they won 48 games after they traded you. they won 48 games after they traded you. They weren't this desolate destination. It's like, no, don't try and change the narrative, dude. You wanted to go to LA. You were hinting like that you wanted to go to LA since you were like in a rookie contract, and then you went to Oklahoma City, and then you basically kind of got forced to sign the extension there. If you remember that, with the whole Oklahoma City party with Presti and Russell Westbrook, because everyone thought you were going to the Lakers, but then like free agency opened and it's like they kind of got you, like they probably got you drunk and they're like, hey, do you want to sign this contract? Remember how fun this year was? And he's like, sure. And then a year later he got traded to the Clippers. So that's kind of like I don't think that he should get his jersey retired there. I think it should go to guys that are there on a team for more than a decade, or if they have had a tremendous amount of accomplishments while in their short time while they were there. We are coming off of the heels of Shaq getting his jersey retired in Orlando, which I feel like I should mention because I'm a little kind of like indifferent about that decision, because it's like Shaq was only there 4 years. Sure, they made the finals once and then, got smashed while they were there. But, I'm cringe at it a little bit, but if you look at kind of similar jersey retirements around the NBA, if you were there for like the start of the franchise and you helped give this franchise credibility, then you are treated a little bit differently. So, Shaq was around there like right after they expanded. So I think that was kind of a big reason of like why they did it to him. And, it was their first jersey retired. Maybe they wanted to break the bridge there. But for Paul George here, you're probably have a better chance of getting your jersey retired for the Clippers. So I would focus on that. And I would just try, if you do care about that stuff, because I think a lot of these guys, and I think, there's kind of seeds of this one, because I think we're going to hear a lot more players over the years give similar quotes about this, that they started their career in a place and maybe even spent the most time of their career in that one place, and they look back and they're like, hey, we had like a playoff run or two, and I made a few all-star teams and an all-NBA team. Maybe I was in the MVP voting once. Why isn't my jersey getting retired there? And I think these guys, because they're bouncing around to 2, 3, 4 different teams throughout the course of their career, I think they're looking back at their careers now that they're in their 30s, and they're like, oh, I don't have an NBA home. I don't have a place that I can go to and, be celebrated, especially these guys that are like one and done in college. Because they can't even go back to their college or anything. They don't have like an NBA home that they can go back to and be like, hey, I can go in there and, I can sit courtside and they can have a ceremony for me, or I can stand up and be on the big screen and I can wave and everyone will cheer me. Now, again, like they probably will do that. Like I think Paul George will get a warmer reception, reception in Indiana. And partly is because, that Paul George trade from Indiana to OKC is basically, it's kind of like what is still the nucleus. Like Indiana is still benefiting from that trade because they trade for Sabonis and Oladipo. And then a few years ago, they obviously trade Sabonis for Halliburton, who's the best player on their team right now and is going to be their, star player for the next, half decade to decade for as long as he's in Indiana. So, yeah, I just think a lot of these players are just looking back at their careers and they're like, hey, I don't have a home, but it's like, this is the life you chose. You didn't want to be in Indiana. You didn't want to be there. Don't give me that you didn't want to. They couldn't win with me there. It's like, well, okay, you went to a bunch of different places and you haven't won. You went to one conference final since you left Indiana. So I don't know if I really want to hear that stuff, but there you have it, guys. I think that's basically all my thoughts for this. Paul George kind of wants his jersey to get retired in Indiana, but also doesn't think it will happen. So let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you got this far, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Just really helps us out in the algorithm, really helps this channel grow as much as we can. We post a lot of NBA videos like this. We also post NFL videos, college football videos, college basketball videos. We're probably going to be shifting a lot towards basketball now that football season is basically over and we're in the off season. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.